I'm Dean Jackson.
Yeah.
The guy in the yellow there is Banana Joe Polish. I don't know if you might have heard, but Joe's got a new book out right now, available in bookstores everywhere, called What's in It for Them?
Great book.
Tell me your books if everybody's got one. Okay, so everybody knows, so we don't need to talk about that. What are we going to talk about?
Why don't we talk about how to apply the principles or some of the things that will be helpful for people to connect? I want to actually go ahead, Dean. I was going to show people too one of the things that I do, because I write about it in the book. Some people ask me what do your riffs look like? So this is a sheet of Joe's. Wow, I've got this backdrop.
There you go.
It's a sheet of riffs. And so basically what I do is one of the things, and I write about this in the book, where every person that has any knowledge or expertise, like musicians have riffs, there's a certain ways that they sound. Mm-hmm. And so there's certain things that I will say and talk about whenever I do podcasts or whenever I do speeches. And I oftentimes don't prepare anything. So people will translate that, well, you're just kind of doing stuff off the cuff. And I am. But what I'm also doing is I'm doing things based on stuff I have known and I've spent many years learning. So it's not like I haven't done any prep. I've spent my life learning about marketing and applying what it is I do in marketing. The same thing with addiction recovery and the same thing with connection, which is what this book is about. And so I could go to any chapter and I have every chapter summarized with riffs. Now, and so I just wanted to share that, because when you read the book, if you haven't read the book yet, there's a section where I talk about riffs. And here in real time, if I needed to glance down and look at my riff list in order to think of something to say or talk about something, I can do that. I don't rely on it like it's a crutch. It's just a jumping off point. And so, yeah. And I would encourage everyone here to make riffs of whatever your category is, whatever your business is, whatever your career is, whatever that area is to create a riff list. And I have 100 things on one riff list that's in 3 columns that are just jumping off points. But this is my entire What's in It for Them book, where I go through
riff-a-log.
Yeah, because I spent 2 years writing this book. My brain, unfortunately, is not. I finally had a chance to meet Jordan Peterson in person on Monday. He came into town, and then I went and met him backstage after the show. And he's one of these rare individuals where I wish I had the ability to retain information like Jordan Peterson. This guy can just talk about endless. Let's say I don't even know how a brain like that operates. But the thing is, you don't need to be super intelligent, because I'm certainly not. You just need to have a few tools in your toolbox, and you need to know how to access those tools when they're most useful. So the whole point of that is to encourage everyone to come up with your own riff list and utilize it, because I find it to be quite helpful.
You know, it's so funny is that one of the greatest things you can do with those is document them. And, you know, I've been doing that in emails. You've been doing it in your 3 emails a week, sending out. They're all sort of riff, ideas that you have. Same thing with me. What I've been doing now is recording video of them. I've been doing. I've switched. Riffs. Yeah, I've been doing video podcasts now, like in a studio. It's like the one you and I did. We did a interview on I Love Marketing, and that in between the podcast recordings or at different times, I'll go in. I've got my remarkable tablet, and I'll just put headlines like the names, almost like a musician would have a set list kind of thing, you know, of the songs that you know. Then you've played these songs so many times. All I need to do is wind you up and say Hello Kitty or whatever. You could tell Hello Kitty wallet story just because we've told it a lot, and that thing, but to get it all documented, you know, it used to be the thing used to be is everything you know written down somewhere is a good frame of reference to think about. And I think that it's a really good exercise for everybody now to start thinking in terms of what are your riffs? What are the things that you know that you repeatedly say that you can tell in a story format in 3 minutes kind of thing, and just challenge yourself to record those. Even I would do a lot of these videos where it's just me looking at the phone and recording like that on a walk, or sitting out in my courtyard or whatever. It doesn't have to even be formal. But when you get into the habit of recording and documenting them, now you've got this great, you start building up this catalog that you start populating your YouTube channel or your social media, and they start spreading, and you've got the opportunity to get earned media, as they say, where people, they're spreading, and it's easy to, like, how many times you talk about is selling evil would probably be one of the first like real riffs that you documented, and how many people have seen that video now, and it's available on YouTube right now. But that was just, how long was it? 3 minutes and something, just talking about is selling evil.
Yeah, it's 3 minutes and 50 seconds. If you guys have not seen okay, that's a good example of a riff. Like, if you look at my current Instagram page, there's a whole bunch of videos we've been putting up. All of a sudden, I've kind of got a little wacky with Instagram, and this is not because of me, but it's my team. Not just Instagram, but Facebook and whatever. Twitter. I need everyone here to follow and comment on Twitter, because I neglected it for so long that I all of a sudden need to make it more active. And I say all of this with, I'm not spending hardly any time on social media. What I do is I record riffs, and then we post the riffs up. And I have a second backup phone that has social media on it, because my main phone, I do not have social media for protection of my sanity reasons. But I'm looking around here trying to, I was on the phone earlier today. I spent over an hour on the phone with Dr. Anna Lemke, who wrote the book Dopamine Nation, which is like a really amazing book, which I would encourage all of you to read that book too. We're going to have her as a guest on the podcast. So anyway, but the thing with riffs, if you look at what I'm doing on Instagram, they're just little riffs. If you've read my book, Life Gives to the Giver, it's all a bunch of riffs, which are a compilation of my 3-a-week emails that are organized into different categories. If you've not read that book, you can get it at joesfreebook.com. Just go to joesfreebook.com. I think most of you here that have been following us for a while have that book. If you want to, and someone wrote, did I pay $8 to get your account verified? No, I have not yet. And I think it used to be verified, and all of a sudden it's not anymore if you haven't paid $8. But I got that kind of money though. I think I could probably do it. But so going back to is selling evil, that was a little clip that a guy who works for us named JR years ago was watching some B-roll where they were interviewing me for a documentary, and they asked me the question, is selling evil? And then I just responded. And it was 30 minutes of B-roll that never made it into the movie. But he saw that little clip and he's like, that's actually a really good response, and just uploaded it on YouTube without me even knowing it. Next thing you know, this is videos being shown in college classes and different stuff like that, in business classes, teaching how to think about selling. And I give a whole little riff on his selling evil. And so if I wanted to go into it, I would say, my favorite definition of selling is from Dan Sullivan, where he says selling is getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for them, and getting them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result. And so I will then ask people, what's the most important words of that definition? And people will say, committed or take action. And then usually no one gets the words exactly right that I'm looking for. Not that there's a right or wrong. It's just perception. I'll say good for them, because I'll say the definition again. Selling is getting someone intellectually engaged in a future result that's good for them, and getting them to emotionally commit to take action to achieve that result. Now, you can get someone intellectually and emotionally engaged in something that's not good for them, or that's dangerous, or shitty food, or shitty behavior, or whatever. But if it's really good for them, then selling is being used in a way that actually benefits someone. So the whole definition from that standpoint is one about integrity, not one about taking advantage. So that's a riff. We can go on to a bunch of different things, but Dean Jackson, like if you think of riffs, 9-word email, before, during, and after. A compelling offer is 10 times more powerful than a convincing argument. Those are, who, not how. Even Dan Sullivan's book, Who, Not How, with Ben Hardy, that is something that Dean originally said. He's the one that came up with Who, Not How, and then they ended up writing a book about it. So whenever, there's a guy that's on here right now live, Dr. Don Wood. I'll ask Don to unmute himself and speak to this in just a moment, but I write about this in my book, that Don, who's a trauma therapist, used to be a hockey player. And when I first met him, I met him at the Spartan World Championships in 2019, and we were both speaking there. And he was on a panel being interviewed for a podcast that was also, I think, being broadcast live on ESPN or something, one of the sports channels during that time. And I heard him say some things about trauma and addiction, and he ended up taking the guy that ended up winning the world championships that weekend. He had taken him through his process like a few days prior to that. But he said this to me. He said, he talked about atmospheric conditions, because one of the conversations me and Don had is, I said, I believe addiction is a solution. It's a solution to pain. And you cannot punish pain out of people. And, it's not that the drugs or the behaviors are the things that are bad. It's the reasons they're doing it. They're trying to soothe and satiate a pain. And so we really connected. And he said, if you understood the atmospheric conditions of somebody's life, it would make sense why they do what it is that they do. So one of the things that I write about in there, with giving credit to Dr. Don Wood, is that everyone has atmospheric conditions. In my life, everyone's life here, that's a riff. So I could talk about that in anywhere. So Don, why don't you say something about atmospheric conditions? Because I believe that a person can alter and change their atmospheric conditions. But since you're right here, it's a good treat and opportunity to have you here, since it's something actually I write about and what's in it for them.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, the atmospheric conditions is something that I used because I'd meet all these different people and they would have all this guilt and shame about, addiction or things that they've done in their lives. And then what I would say to them is, how could you have been any different? Right? If I had lived your life the way you lived your life, I would have found the same kind of resource, maybe not the exact one, but I would have found something to stop that pain. And I always talk to them about, humans have very unique memory systems. We have two memory systems: explicit memory, where we store billions and billions of bits of information. And we also have associative repetitive memory, the same way animals do. They learn through association and repetition. So if you've had a lot of trauma, that explicit memory is stored in real time in high definition. So your subconscious operates in the present. So when it accesses memory from something that happened to you maybe as a child, it's going to create an autonomic nervous system response. It has to. It's not a choice. So if your system gets activated, then you're going to feel an emotion, because the emotion is a call for an action, but you can't do the action because there's nothing happening. And so it's doing a Google search through your entire life for how do we respond to this. Then it goes into the second memory system, which is the associative repetitive, which I call coding. And so the more you've used that substance, you've built a code, a neural pathway that your mind says, oh, we know what to do when we feel this pain. Go right to the code. And then the code says, take a drink, take a drug, have sex, whatever it is, to stop this pain. And I say, you couldn't have done it any other way.
Yeah, you couldn't have done it any other way. So even if people are doing what's considered good or bad, that just happens to be the current state of their atmospheric conditions that kind of create the outcome. And so the good news, and I'd love to hear your thinking around this. And this is one of the things I've been saying to people, and I think I've always believed this, Don, even when I was in the state of hopelessness, when I was in the worst state of being a drug addict. Some people, they just have lost every shred of hope, and that's where suicide and complete just destruction of their lives and family and everything surrounding comes in. That there's always been that part of me, that flame, that even when it was almost completely burnt out, where I actually believed, I could come back. I believed, there was a possibility. And I think the framing of atmospheric conditions, I believe one can not only alter and change their atmospheric conditions or to reframe and make sense of the past, but if you do that for yourself, you can really, in a very beneficial way, influence other people. So I think every human here has the ability to change their atmospheric conditions, not only how they think about them, but how they actually live out their life, and that you can fashion and design your own future.
For sure. So, and that's what I do, is I say, we just need to reset the way your mind filters through your set of atmospheric conditions. So if you have, say, a situation that you had as a child, that's stored in high definition, very bright, very intense. Your subconscious mind that's operating in real time sees that as if it's happening now. And so then it's going to call for an action. So every time you have an emotion, your mind is calling for an action. The purpose of fear is to escape a threat. The purpose of anger is to attack a threat. So when you think about something that happened to you 20 years ago and your heart's pounding in your chest, it's a glitch. It's an error message. Your mind is trying to get you into an action to make it stop, but you can't make it stop. So the problem for the individual is they keep looping through this trauma, activating their nervous system, and they can't stop it. And so how do they stop that? They stop the mind from Google searching through its memory by taking a drug or taking a drink, and it stops it. And then they keep repeating it. So now the second memory system that codes on how to make behaviors and habits, right, then builds a code on what to do with it. So what we do is go into that explicit memory and reset that memory system. So I take it at a high definition, get it into a low definition, almost the opposite of what they did with the Wizard of Oz, where they went from black and white to color. We're going to go from color to black and white. Then when the mind sees that data, it doesn't respond to it because it's just data.
Right.
So when I worked with the Boston Marathon bombing survivors, right, when she first sat down, Rebecca Gregory, she was 4 feet from the first bomb and she lost her left leg. And 5.5 years of post-traumatic stress, terror nightmares every night. And when she first sits down, starts talking to me, she starts to shake and cry. And I said, Rebecca, do you know why you're shaking and crying? She says, well, because I'm talking about what happened to me. And I said, right, but your mind thinks there's a bomb about to go off. It's looking at the information about the bombing in real time, trying to get you to run. But it's an error message. All we have to do is reset that. So Joe, you're absolutely right. Nobody has to live with post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety. You can fix it.
Yeah. Well, someone actually, why don't you put your information, Don, in the chat too, because someone had asked, how do you do it? Now, here's what I would say. There's a lot of different ways that you can connect with other people. And my book, we'll go through lots of different ways that what I've done. The first chapter is about be a pain detective and look for the pain and connect with someone on how you can reduce their suffering and how you can, develop real, rapport and empathy. And it usually comes from a place of pain, although it could come from a place of pleasure too, certainly. However, the reason I bring up these conversations about pain and stuff in the book is that if you're disconnected with yourself, it's really hard to be connected with other people. And if you have trauma that's kind of overriding your behavior, one of the things I mentioned in my book is humans are either communicating where you're just talking to each other. And that could be on Zoom, it could be in person, it could be, on the phone, it could be whatever, it could be any form of communication. But if you just take an in-person situation, and I'll mention this at events where you're at an event in person, there's either a few or a lot of people around you. And if you're at a 1 or 2 or 3 day event and you're interacting with everyone, you're either communicating, where you're just talking, you're connecting, where you're finding common ground and you really feel like you're dancing well with the other person, you're enjoying it. And the third experience is you're trying to escape, where you're just like, get me away from this person. There's something about the energy, or you're distracted, or you're hungry, or you're just not there with them, or you're frankly don't like them and they don't like you. There's something about what you believe, or just sometimes it's this energetic feeling and you don't even know how to explain it, but you just don't, you kind of pick up on it. And what I hope is that everyone can develop their spidey senses to identify the takers in the world, and kind of put up boundaries to it. Because the real goal of my book is to help givers be better boundaried givers, so that they can really spend their, what I call in chapter 2, your T.A.M.E.E, your time, attention, money, effort, and energy on people that are worthy of that. But to go back to Don, in atmospheric conditions, if that keeps you from being connected with yourself, how the hell are you going to connect very well with other people? And the people that are the biggest con artists is they don't connect, they connect with people. There's connecting where you're connecting by conning people. And that's what a lot of marketers that do it unethically do, is they bullshit people. And then there's real connecting where you're actually coming at it from a good place. So the reason I intermingle so much about addiction and so much about, just the human being, the $1 million racehorse, that analogy that I talk about quite a bit, I'll go more in detail on that in a little bit, is that, if you don't take care of you, I can teach people connection strategies all day long, but if you're walking around the world constantly trying to escape your own skin, or you don't feel comfortable anywhere, you're just not going to do as good of a job leveraging any potential relationships and opportunities that are always available. People that cannot seem to get things to work in their life, I almost want them to look at their life first before the external opportunities that are out there. What the sun is often always there, but there's clouds in the way that are preventing, the sun from coming through. And sometimes that's just the weather conditions, but the atmospheric conditions are the weather conditions of our own lives.
In our minds.
Well, yeah, exactly.
In our minds. That's really the thing. I've been working on I got a riff in the making in the category of imagine if you applied yourself. That that's often talked about how Dan Sullivan and I was talking about this on our podcast, but when my mother died, she had a box with all of my old report cards and stuff. So I got to look back, like talk about, going down memory lane there. But my 3rd grade report card summed it all up with the handwritten comments in the comment section was, Dean is able to achieve excellent results with what seems like little effort. Imagine if he applied himself. And that's been kind of my life pattern for my whole life. And I was talking with Eben, or texting with Eben a couple of nights ago, because it hit me a breakthrough that I think is like something real. And I'm so glad that Don's here too, because it's kind of, I think, in the line of what he's saying, that it dawned on me that in order for somebody to change something, anything that's not working in our lives, is usually there's a breakdown of one of 3 things. It's either the logic of what you're trying to do, that you're just trying to do something that doesn't make sense, or you're going about it in the wrong way, or the logic is right. This is the plan that will work, but the logistics are wrong. You're not doing what you know to do. It's a logistics problem. But barring a logic or logistics problem, perhaps the biggest 80% of the reason I think that we don't get the results or get the thing that we're trying to change is a limbic problem that there's going on in our minds that's blocking us from doing the thing that we know to do. And that's really so I'd love to have, that's as far as I've gotten on the riff in the making, but I love the elegance of the limbic logic, or the logic, logistics, and limbic, getting those in alignment. I came up with Eben. I was saying that you can test the logic and logistics of something by doing a limbic lockdown exercise. And I was talking about weight loss as an example, that the logic of following a keto diet with intermittent fasting is that's a plan that you're going to do. That would be the logic of what you're going to do. The logistics of that would be Okay, well, we're not going to eat anything till noon. We're going to eat all the food between 12 and 6 o'clock, and we're going to eat this ketogenic plan. These are the meals that we're going to eat. On paper, it's pretty easy, logically and logistically, to lay it out. But in practice, what happens is you, just like Mike Tyson would say, everybody's got a plan till I punch him in the face. Is everybody's got a plan till somebody presents you a Krispy Kreme donut or something, right? That your limbic system has linked that Krispy Kreme to delightful memories that will fill you with the dopamine and the wonderful outcome that you're going to do. But if you were to do a limbic lockdown on that, I've said to Eben, there's no doubt that if you were locked in a prison or locked in a room and somebody brought you the appropriate amount of calories following the exact logic that you've laid out, that you're going to eat between 12 and 6, and it's going to be the right number of calories with the right macros, and that was the only access to food that you had. You did a limbic bypass. There's no way for your limbic system to derail that. It would be inevitable that your plan would work, and that's so. There's certain things, like I was thinking along that lines, that if you were to put two glasses on a counter, and one is filled with a ice-filled glass of windshield wiper fluid, and one is filled with a glass of Mountain Dew, and they look exactly the same, you don't have to convince your brain, I don't have to convince my brain to not drink the windshield wiper fluid. But if you were presented with the Mountain Dew, even though ultimately it's the same outcome, I mean, it's the same poison, it's just long-term acting or short-term acting, the consequence is linked up differently, So what do you think of that? I mean, that's kind of
well, I would almost default that back to Dr. Don Wood and see what his thoughts are. I guess, let me do kind of a timeout for a minute and think about this Zoom that we're having. So we're having an I Love Marketing live, and there's those shows behind the scenes, how it's made, all that sort of stuff. And you go back a few minutes when I asked Dr. Don Wood about atmospheric conditions. And so I have a great marketing team, and I have a couple of people on my everyone in my company is part of my marketing team, from Gina, who's hosting this, to everyone. But I've got a gal named Lauren and her partner Paige, and they have they help with a lot of stuff, from articles that are being put out to a lot of the stuff you see on social media and things. And so I asked, I brought up this whole thing about atmospheric conditions, and then I asked Dr. Don Wood about it. And so I have a book out that's right now. And so what could I have as clips that are supportive of my book and would speak to the things in the book? But we can edit that little section of Don riffing about atmospheric conditions, and all of a sudden it becomes a Instagram video, or it can become an article, or it could become a post, right? And so oftentimes what we want to do as part of I Love Marketing is remind people that something as simple as a phone conversation that you're having with a prospect is an opportunity to say, well, how many times do I get this question? And maybe I need to start writing, this in my newsletter, and I need to have a Q&A section on my website, or I need to speak to this. Now, I know a lot of you do this, and that's how you create quote unquote content. It's just oftentimes, though, I think a lot of people just miss so much of it that's right in front of them. And we have these little vignettes, these little slices, these little thought bubbles that we constantly come up with. Like I went to when was it? I had a very interesting week. So I went to this event that I spoke for about 6 hours with Nick Peterson. During the 2.5 days. So he's a crypto guy who's one of the best that I know in that space, and ethical and just a cool dude. And it was Harvey Mackay's 90th birthday. and Harvey Mackay wrote a book. And if you're too young, you may not even know who the hell Harvey Mackay is. But if you're old enough, Harvey Mackay sold millions of books, and he was a big best-selling, famous author. He wrote How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. And so I go there, and Jay Abraham was also there because I picked up Jay the day before and took him to this event, and we did me, Nick, and Jay did a 3-person Q&A with the audience. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sitting there with Jay Abraham, Harvey Mackay, a couple of his friends, and John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. And then one of the ladies is asking me about addiction. And I don't know John very well. I met him years ago, but we're not like buddies or anything. And then he starts asking me for my contact info because he wants to talk to me about addiction recovery related stuff, which I thought was cool. And so Harvey, one of the ways that Harvey has written all of his books, he's written many books, is he will literally write on a piece of paper any idea or thought that will come to him, and then he'll throw it into like an in basket, like an old school basket where you would just like collect folders in 8.5 by 11 paper, and he fills it up. And then he'll go through those things, and those become articles. They end up becoming books. And so a lot of people do this digitally. I mean, one of the first things that Tim Ferriss would do when he was writing his books is he would put it all in Evernote. He would take these little thought bubbles. And then Ryan Holiday, who we've got on our podcast, he writes them on 3x5 cards. But wherever you store your riffs, what happens is if we don't start using the things that we do every day as recipe cards and keep them either digitally or physically, we lose them. And every time you have one that works and people respond to it, that's how comedians practice. Like they go and they do a show and they figure out, what does the audience laugh at? What do they reject? And then I think, if there's any theme here, is if you think of selling as like pickup lines. If you're going to go out and you're going to go to a cold market, you're just going to try randomly. You've got nothing to work with except what you say and the tone of your voice and how you say it. There's certain things that are going to get a different response than others. And it may be what you say, but it also may be how you say it. And so when I take an idea like atmospheric conditions that came from Dr. Don Wood, I can either steal his idea and I could make it my own, which a lot of people do, or I could credentialize the guy. He's actually a Genius Network member. I heard about this before he was a Genius Network member, but part of my relationship with Don is, and part of his relationship with me, is we both live our lives according to what I write about in this book. We show up trying to be helpful and useful to people. And that's kind of what we try to do with this podcast. And it's kind of the advice I try to give people. Like, everybody wants something. Nobody showed up on this Zoom today if you didn't want something. And it may be, I want to learn about marketing, or I like Joe's book, or I have rapport with a lot of you, and who knows what's going to come out of my mouth, but let's just see, maybe you wanted to be entertained. I have no idea, but all of us want something. But in life, we all want something, and that's great. I mean, I want a lot of stuff. I'm actually, I use this example. I'm actually getting hungry. After this, I'm going to want to eat something. So we all want something.
Wash it down with a nice glass of windshield wiper fluid.
Yeah. I just use it's mostly just water. But all that being said, is when it comes to other humans, the people that we like are the people that show up with a give that's also equal or greater than their want. When somebody wants something from us and they offer nothing in return except, I want something from you, versus, hey, I want something, but I'm going to collaborate. I'm going to be reciprocal. I'm going to be appreciative. You would think about all the relationships that are most important in your life. They're the people that that show up with wants, but they also have a give that's as good as or greater than your then they're giving you something that's greater than their want, because the people that don't are takers. And this whole riff idea is, if you were to think of all of the contributions that you could make to your clients, to prospects, to the world, if you're single, there's a section in my book about how to use marketing to find true love. And then I have, a bonus interview with Annie Lala. Some of you heard the podcast we did with Annie Lala, and I literally read a singles ad on how to describe, it's literally marketing. I mean, it's another form of marketing, but it's very open, it's very vulnerable, and it's very contributing. And all of us want something here. And I would think of just putting your very best insights and ideas and awareness onto a page of paper or on your phone or however you store it so you can reference it. And those become the developed seeds of ideas, because a really great this book took 3 decades for me to write. It took 2 years to work on it. But you know, the concepts of it, and I would love to have every person that stays with us. And when I mean stays with us, it could either be a client, it could be someone that's in Genius Network, it could be someone that goes to, you know, Dean Jackson's breakthrough blueprints. I love all of the people here that offer value in the world to actually document and write this stuff, put it out in the world in piecemeal, and also put it together in a book. And then when I have someone like Don that actually I ask him a question about it, it just deepens the whole concept of atmospheric conditions. I guarantee you this book is going to make, from my standpoint, the atmospheric conditions a very popular conversation to add to what Dr. Don Wood was already doing in his own world and in his own life. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That's like the how it's made sort of thing, Dean. I wanted to speak to that, and then let's come back to the limbic question you had.
Yeah, I'd love to have Don's take on our whether barking up the right tree with that logic, logistics, and limbic.
Well, what I was going to say is that makes sense, because people will say, "Oh, I should be able to do that." But when there's a survival threat, the logic has no play in it. The conscious mind, it's always overridden by survival. Survival will always override reason and logic, and you can't stop it. And here's what's interesting. The subconscious mind, your survival brain, operates 400 millionths of a second before you're consciously able to do anything.
That's the whole
400 millionths of a second. Yeah. It has already gone forward with its plan, right? So it's in action, and there's a part of the brain, the frontal lobe, which is our conscious mind, our logical, reasonable mind, called the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, which is supposed to be the impulse control. But it's already 400 millionths of a second behind. And if it's a logical thing and you can stop it, it's possible. But chances are, if it's a survival thing, it's not a chance. It can never stop it. And that's why I always say to people who are in addiction, this has nothing to do with your character, morals, willpower, or strength. You can't stop your subconscious mind that's survival based from protecting you, even though it's operating with an error message.
So how do you stop it? I mean, there's got to be a way, like you were describing, of essentially what you were doing was rearranging the limbic to support what the logic, if you call logic the thing you want to do. Like if somebody wants to stop the behavior that manifests the addiction or whatever, the impulse control that we're unable to muster with just the logic. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop drinking Mountain Dew, or I'm going to stop drinking alcohol, or whatever. It seems logical that's easy. And then, well, what do I need to do? I just need to not drink, or not eat, McDonald's, or not whatever. It sounds great when you're planning it in your head, but in the real world, then the limbic system doesn't. Whatever that says it's doing its own thing, right? Is that
absolutely? And it's not listening to that logic, because it says, if I have to rely on logic, I could be dead by the time I figure out whether it's logical.
Right.
So it is already engaged. So I'll give you an example. I worked with a professional baseball player. And so we're there, and he's hitting in not the batting cage. His coach is pitching to him behind a screen. And so the coach throws the pitch. He hits the ball straight back at his head, right at the screen. Right. And the coach booms down on the dirt. And so I said to him, did he choose to duck? He didn't. His mind, even though there was a cage in front of him, he can't possibly get hit by this baseball.
Right.
He cannot stop ducking. And he would duck every single time, because his mind tells him there's a ball coming at your head. Logically, we shouldn't have any worry because the screen's there, but that's gone out the window because it doesn't take any chances. And the other thing that we see, we do brain mapping. When somebody has post-traumatic stress, for an example, the mind is looking at subconsciously old information from years ago and responding to it in real time. The brain map shows us that the occipital lobes, the O1 and O2 area in the brain are lit up, which tells us it's looking at something, but it's not looking at what's in front of them. It's looking at memory. So what we do, Dean, is we reset the memory. We take it at a high definition. It's stored in, when you have a traumatic memory, all your senses are heightened: sight, smell, hearing. So it goes into a high beta brainwave state and records it in high definition. And so what we do is reset it and bring it back into a lower resolution. And we can do that in like 2 minutes. We can reset it all.
That's so amazing. I recently heard, like, I have a perfect example of this, that I recently heard someone, I forget who it was, but they said basically, if you're going to tell yourself a lie, tell yourself a good lie, right? Like, because you're lying to yourself anyway, right? So an example was, if you're repeating this constant belief that you have or something. So I'll give you the perfect example of it. Sometimes I'll wake up at like 4:30 in the morning. And in the past, I would think, because that's an awkward time where you're like, okay, there's not that much more time till when I'm gonna wake up. And sometimes I couldn't get back to sleep. But I started, so that was my pattern. When I wake up at 4:30, I think, oh, it's that awkward. I won't really get good sleep. But I started, when I heard that, started telling myself a better lie. I started saying to myself, when I wake up at 4:30, I get excited about that because I'll go pee and then I come back and have the best 2.5 hours of sleep that I've had all night. And I started repeating that in my mind. And wouldn't you know it, that now I have the best and it's data supported by my Aura ring, that I actually have the best like sleep in that last 2.5 hours of the day, because I've told myself that that's what's gonna happen. It's just fascinating.
But it's because your subconscious mind is literal.
Yeah.
I always tell this when I work with an athlete, say a golfer. If you say in your mind, don't hit the ball in the water, it doesn't understand the negation.
Don't.
So all it hears is hit the ball in the water.
Yeah.
So when you tell your mind that, your subconscious mind is literally taking that.
Yeah.
The logical part of the mind doesn't always use that, but the subconscious does every time.
Hey, that's funny. I'm a golfer too, and I might have great belief about my driving. I never miss the fairway. I can hit it as straight as I can point. Those are the words that I say to people and to myself, and it's true. You know, I very rarely ever go off the fairway. You know, so interesting. I love this kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's one of the things I talk with the professional golfers. This is a really interesting concept. When I work with them, the first thing I'll say to them is, do you think you need to be confident to play good golf? And they'll all say, yeah. And I'll say, no, you don't. You have skill.
Right.
Confidence is a byproduct of your skill. It's what happens after you execute your skill. If you put it in front of your skill, you'll chase confidence all over the golf course. But if you rely on your skill, you'll never have to worry. And these guys are so good at the professional level that they can hit any kind of shot in any kind of situation.
Yeah.
They're so highly skilled. They don't need confidence. Confidence will leave them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's talk about confidence and courage. I just as a jumping off point, and we can riff on that for a bit. So, you know, Dan Sullivan has that story when he was in he was a cadet in the Army, and they had like 60 of them, and they were having to do during that time in the world. He was born in 1944, so this was in the 60s, I guess. He was with 60 of the other cadets, and they were the boot camp obstacle course that they were running through had barbed wire and trenches they had to go through, mud and water, all kinds of, you know, just obstacles they had to go through. And they used real bullets at the time, and they would shoot real bullets over their head. And they said, you have to stay low because if you lift your head up, you could get shot in the head and die. And so Dan is explaining this story, and he said, the sergeant asked, how many of you are scared? And no one except Dan raised his hand and said that he was scared. And he said, the only person here telling the truth is, Cadet Sullivan or whatever. And he said, so Dan says, he learned the difference between fear and courage. He said, fear is peeing your pants and courage is doing what you need to do with wet pants. And so in order for us to get to confidence, we often have to operate with courage. Like, so in my book, I talk quite a bit about how to align yourself with the right people. There's that Zig Ziglar line, which is you can have anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. But my friend Martin Howie, when he had stage 4 cancer, came over to my office and he said, a lot of people say these lines like people don't want a drill, they want a hole. Or you can get anything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. He goes, but the problem is those things are often wrong because sometimes people buy a drill not because they want a hole, they want to stir paint because there's other things that you can do with a drill other than drill a hole. So maybe they don't want a hole, maybe they want, paint to be stirred. And he said the same thing with you can help other people get what they want that won't do a damn thing for you. And that's true. Like all of us have been in situations where we've really helped others get what they want that not only didn't help us at all, they oftentimes took advantage and oftentimes abuse you and rip you off and betray you. And what happens is when you're a giver, you can become jaded by being a good human, doing the right thing. Like everyone thinks they're doing the right thing. Even when people are doing the wrong things, most people think they're right. So it takes an enormous amount of awareness to realize that even when you think you're right, you could be totally wrong. That's another discussion. But the thing is, most people think they're right. And that whole line, people judge themselves on their intentions, they judge others on their actions. So, when the actions of you being a giver and helping someone intentionally followed with action, and then someone takes advantage of you, it can leave you in a very dark place. So when you become hurt or you have your heart broken, you become betrayed, you can put up walls to connecting with other people. And oftentimes when someone wants something from you and they're so persuasive to the point of physical assertiveness, or you feel like, man, I don't know how to escape this sort of situation, that's where we have to be able to muster courage and either set boundaries. Now, preferably, if we do this in advance, you have less of those sort of difficult situations to get in with people that are half, not people that are elf, easy, lucrative, and fun versus hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. So what I wanted to talk with you guys about as it relates to this, since you're talking about courage, how do you muster or develop the ability to resource yourself to fight when you need to fight back, run away when you need to run away, ask for help when you need to ask for help? Because a lot of times when I was a dead broke entrepreneur struggling, none of this shit was fun. I didn't have an elf business. It wasn't enjoyable. I didn't know how to do marketing. I didn't do any of this stuff. And I had to wake up every day and muster as much courage as I could to drag myself through the war that I somehow was in. When I was going through addiction recovery, none of it was enjoyable. It sucked. And when you're doing withdrawals or you're trying to, overcome, the consequences of just life, danger, etc., it's very difficult. So I'd love to get your take, Don, on accessing courage so that we can function in those times when we need it. Because if whatever you fear and don't face controls you. Whatever you fear and take steps to face, you can control it or at least get better at it. And that oftentimes requires courage. And I don't think anyone here would disagree that operating with courage doesn't feel good. Operating with confidence does feel good. So to go back to the skill, when you got the skill, there's a flow that's there. When you don't, you're going to have to kind of muster this internal resourcefulness. So I'd love to get your take on that and anything you would say to this Dean, also, or anyone here. I'm totally open to hear what everyone else has to say about it, because I think courage right now is really needed in the world, especially with givers, because there's a lot of freaking takers out there.
Well, my thought on courage is if it's a life-threatening, what Dan was going through situation, it makes total sense that he would feel fear, right?
Yes.
That's not a lack of courage. That's just the brain saying, we may get our head shot off, right? So courage, you got to still operate even though you're afraid. And what they say, courage is not the absence of fear, right? It's operating in spite of fear.
Mm-hmm.
But when I work with a golfer, I don't need them to feel fear because there's nothing on the golf course. That's what I explained to them. What are you afraid of on a golf course? There's nothing life-threatening, but they make it into life-threatening because they start seeing the bunker, they start seeing the water, they start seeing the trees, and that attracts their attention. And now it becomes a lion. And that's what I said is if you think that way, you're going to create all kinds of fears, but there's nothing at your skill level that you can't do. So again, courage is not something that would be absent just because you have skill, especially if it's life-threatening. You have to operate in spite of it.
That's good.
So I used to tell myself, Don, I would imagine that everything we're seeing is just a holodeck. That none of that, the ball is sitting on one little patch of the ground, and you're standing on that ground. The ball's not moving. Nobody's yelling at you. No, there's no threat physically. You could set up exactly the way you need to. You know how to swing, and the sight of that water or that stuff in your eye line, that's not affecting anything that you're having to do here. It's all it's going to fly through the air, and it's going to land precisely the distance that that club is going to go when you swing the way that you need to swing. It's just so funny how we psych ourselves out like that.
Well, the skill level of golf, it's the hardest sport I've ever played, because the best explanation I heard is somebody said to me one time, think about having a nail tapped into the wall. Now take a hammer and swing as hard as you can and drive that nail straight into the wall.
Mm-hmm.
That takes skill. You wouldn't be able to do it the first few times. It would take a long time. The guy who said that to me, Hawk Harrelson, is the announcer of the White Sox.
Mm-hmm.
He says it's also the equivalent of playing Major League Baseball and hitting every ball over second base.
Uh-huh.
How hard would that be? Right. And so the difficulty, and that's what I always try to explain to these guys, at your level, there isn't anything you can't do. They're so skilled. When you go out and play with these guys, the thing that's funny is people look at these guys and they say, well, I could go out and play. They don't play the same courses we do. When they go out to a professional course, it is set up completely different than what the amateurs are playing. The rough is longer, the greens are faster, the pins are in tougher places. They're playing, like Tiger Woods said, he said, if you're a single-digit handicap and you play some of the courses we play, you'd have trouble breaking 100.
That's the truth. I played Sawgrass the last round that you could play before the tournament, and then they tore down the clubhouse, and the rough was, you go in that, and that rough is punitive. I mean, it's like,
and they get out of it like it's nothing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And we just could take 3 shots to get out.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny listening to you guys talk about golf. So Dean has this great golf analogy about how he works, where he likes golf. I always say it's like, George Carlin, it's a waste of real estate, but he there's so much more you could do with that land. But anyway, Dean is like, why do I like playing golf? So he came up with an acronym, which is G stands for goal, O stands for, and I remember all this shit. O stands for optimal environment, L stands for limited distractions, and F stands for fixed time frame. And so Dean set up a house where he calls it his evil scheme hatchery, where he goes and has a whiteboard and a chair, and he doesn't have technology in the room. If he wants to bring in a laptop or a phone, he could do that, but he has it free of like computers and stuff, unless he wants to bring stuff in. And there's this whiteboard. So it's like a blank space where he can do his entrepreneurial art, which in his case is thinking. And he goes and plays golf. So he gives himself a goal. He creates an optimal environment to do it in. He has limited distractions there. That's why there's no technology and stuff there unless he chooses to bring it in. And then a fixed time frame where he'll go in and, he's like, I play golf because I can go through 18 holes in 3.5, 4 hours or whatever. I don't ever play golf, so I don't really know this stuff. But, it's a good thing. We actually did an I Love Marketing episode on how to go play golf in your own life and apply that.
Just posted up. There's a YouTube video called the 50-minute focus finder, and it's right there. Gina posted it up in the chat.
Yeah, and that's from years ago too. That was one of our very first episodes when we started doing I Love Marketing in 2010. Let me answer this question right here from Mario. How do you keep everything still interesting? This is for me, Joe. How do you keep everything interesting to you when you've said it 10,000 times before, but it's life-changing to the newest person hearing it for the first time? And then we'll take the questions that people have here. The interesting thing about that is most of the things that I say, I haven't said 10,000 times, and I always say them differently. And if I ever get bored with it, there's so many things, people that have listened to, what I've been teaching marketing stuff since, for 28 years now. And I really first learned marketing in 1992. So I'm 30 years of doing this stuff because I'm 54 years old right now. And if I get bored with it or I don't like it anymore, I frankly just quit talking about it. I mean, there's stuff that I used to talk about that I just kind of was done with, and then I started another chapter. And over the years, I've gone into different areas of interest and stuff. So I always have to keep things elf for me. But I went and saw Elton John on Friday night. On Friday night, there were 2 shows here in Phoenix. We're talking like 30, 40,000 people at each one, and they were sold out. It was insanely packed. And I was like, how many freaking times is this guy saying Rocket Man? He's 75 years old. Is he bored out of his mind? And it was a great show. It was an amazing show. And I had met Elton John years ago. He was at Elton John Oscar party, and I went up and talked to him and Katy Perry when they were having dinner. And that was in 2013. And it's like the same shit that he's been singing over and over again. But I'll tell you, I don't know. I don't know if he just loves it. But I remember saying to Cherie, my girlfriend, I was like, God, I mean, I wonder if he's just bored out of his mind of singing the same song. But, it's interesting to be asked the same thing, because to me, it doesn't seem, I always give a different twist on it. And the beauty of a riff list, I've never been able to give a signature talk. I admire my speaker friends that can give the same exact talk over and over again. I've never been able to do it. I've tried. I can't. My brain is too distractible. I'm too ADD, and I just go in too many different tangents, and so I cannot keep to a script. So some people I think work well off of that. I certainly do not. But the thing that keeps it interesting to answer the question is I always go deeper with it. And the beauty of writing this book is I really had to think about things that what I do and try to explain how I do them. And so my book is a bit of a, capability book and strategy book on things that I do, but it's really designed to be a character book. I hope that it helps people really think about what they do and how they do it and why, and who they invest their time, attention, money, and effort and energy with. And my marketing friends are like, what are you hoping to get out of the book? What are you trying to sell? Are you trying to sell Genius Network? And I'm like, I actually wrote a book so that 100 years from now, when I'm long gone, hopefully people are still reading it. It's not a book designed to pitch people. Does it talk about Genius Network? Yes. Is it designed as a sales letter? No, it's not. I mean, I have other books for that. And so anyway, that's my response to that. And there's some other comments here, but let's go to the questions that whoever has their hand raised. Gina, I'll let you monitor that.
All right. So CDK. You get to unmute. All right.
What does CDK stand for?
Oh, it's Karina Dorothy Crail. I'm Karina, the one that we were working on the ceramics piece.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I'm really grateful that this is an opportunity to like see you again.
Yes.
And I've been in a space where I've been committed all year long to like acting out of courage, and I've been traveling different places, like making money, going broke again, making money, going broke again. And I've been operating like out of courage and not fear, but I'm getting really like a little bit exhausted of that process, to be honest. I like want to create stability in myself, and just listening to the limbic system note and like all the things you've been saying, I've been reflecting because I'm at a point where, by the way, I'm staying in Phoenix long enough to have a conversation with that gallery person that you know connected with me, and thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just don't want to be in a position where I'm constantly like, okay, then what? And I'm like being in a position where I am very elf, but I found myself at times being half too. And I don't want to ever do that again. And especially not to people that I really care about. I don't want to ever put like the people I love into compromising positions ever.
Right.
And so I'm just realizing like that comes from me not feeling capable or me not feeling confident. And I'm like trying to find what's my plan going to be, you know, after that meeting, right? Like, so I'm not just like shit out of luck. And I'm curious, like, is it possible to break these cycles in the same atmosphere as you experience trauma? Because I've been sitting here like, maybe I should like go back home and just sit and get really clear, and understand like how I want to show up in this world and who I want to work with and all of that. But I am a little bit afraid because home is not a safe place for me energetically. And so I figured this is probably the safest place I could ask a question like that. I also am starting to see really, really clearly just how capable I am and how much I do have to offer the world. But I just don't want to ever like be in a position where anyone even feels like I'm taking advantage of anything, because I'm so much better than that. And I want to be around people who are better than that too, and foster those relationships in real life.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking the question. Here's I can speak for myself of what, when I was in the worst times in my life, I could not seem to function without falling into holes. And I was an addict, and I was a really bad addict. I was a functional addict, but I was talking to Dr. Anna Lemke, the one that wrote Dopamine Nation, earlier today, and we had just recently met. And I was telling her about when I was, the worst state of being a drug addict. When I was 18 years old, I weighed 1 week, I weighed 105 pounds. And my average weight at that time was 120 pounds. And when you're an 18-year-old male and you weigh 120 pounds, that's pretty skinny. But 1 week I was not eating hardly at all. I didn't have any money to buy any food. I was just doing drugs. And I got down to 105 pounds. And I told her there was one day where I weighed, I weighed 105 pounds, and I was smoking pot, smoking cigarettes, snorting cocaine, smoking cocaine, snorting crystal meth, and I took LSD all on a single day. And I said, it's amazing I didn't friggin' die. And that was just in a really dark place, right? And how the hell I pulled myself out of that is, grace of God, luck, whatever. But what ended up really helping me, because I was really messed up for a long time, and is I had to find other people. And where I found the community is 12 steps, right? And I will often tell people that 12 steps, even if you're not an addict, even though most people are, there's lots of support groups that cost no money and that are often better and more useful for human connection than therapy can be, even though I'm a big fan of the right therapy and the right therapists and the right community. But it's just being able to, whenever we feel like giving up, or wherever we feel like our energy reserves are exhausted, there's ways to replenish them. Now, if one has money and means, you can, pay for massages, you can go to gyms, you can have a nice house, you can do all that. But if you're limited, then that's where it's, necessity is the mother of invention sort of thing, where you just start tapping into resourcing yourself and saying, okay, what would I do for me if I was my own best friend? How would I reach out? Where would I look for? And I cannot tell you how many times I've suggested, and few people do it, but the ones that do usually give me really good feedback, is to go to a group, go to a 12-step group and help other people that are struggling. Because when I feel like shit and I think my life sucks and I feel like, I'm so drained, and I find someone that is in a painful situation, and I can often lend advice. Sometimes if someone's dying, because I've sat with people, I've been the primary caretaker for two people that while they were dying, one of them being my father and another being my friend, Dr. Janice Dorn. And then I've been kind of around people that were dying where I wasn't their primary caretaker. And there's times where you're not going to stop someone from dying, especially if they have a debilitating disease and or it's that time, right? So a lot of times all you can provide is you can provide companionship. All you can do is sit there and love them or listen to them. And even if they're people you had a very difficult time with, and I'm not talking about hanging out with people that it's toxic and destructive for you. I'm just talking about, it's interesting how we can replenish our energy when it feels like we've given everything, when we're sitting down with people that are just really struggling. And I'm saying this, not that I'm, again, none of this is for entertainment purposes only. Treat it like a 12-step group, take what you like and leave the rest. It's this, I often feel really encouraged by encouraging other people. I seem to get more when I give, and that's different than sacrificing yourself. That's different than, giving your last penny or neglecting sleep, or you're already starving and you're trying to help someone, you're giving your last meal away. I mean, you can't fix the world with broken hands. So you have to be able to, keep yourself in a certain place. But all of us as humans are going to go through stages where we're selfish, self-centered, desperate, broken, and that's where we need to go and ask for help. And when someone's really down and out, they will walk into 12-step rooms. That 12 steps is interesting because they'll say built through attraction, not promotion. But no one is attracted to walking into a 12-step group. It's really desperation. People that walk into a 12-step group, their life is not working and they don't know where else to go. And thank God they walk into that room. And there's a lot of people that are anti-12-step, and I understand, I could argue for both ways. It's not the end all and be all of everything, but what it is it's community. And so what I would say, even in my book, I talk about your genius network. Like if you need to figure something out, make a list of who are the people that you could reach out to that could help you in a particular area where you feel you need the most help. And if you can't come up with a name, at least come up with who that person could be, and then do your damnedest to go and find them, or to talk to someone to reach out and do it. Kind of like what you're doing now. That person and making those calls. So that's what I would say. And oftentimes the reason I even bring up 12 steps is almost everywhere in the world. There's rural areas and there's parts of the world where you can't. But in most places, it's usually within driving distance to go to any sort of 12-step meeting. And I've even told people that don't identify as addicts is go to an open meeting and just listen to what these people are saying. And it's sometimes you'll hate it, but other times you'll be like, wow, that actually is really useful, just being around other people, because there's a lot of people that your love and your care and your concern and your art and your skills will rejuvenate them. And by doing that, it'll rejuvenate you. And that being said, also, sometimes you just got to go sell something. Sometimes it's like, what? I got something to pitch. I think it's going to be good. Let me find and let me market it. Let me sell it. Let me shoot a video. Let me ask other people to refer me. And, so I don't want to take any of that away. So those are my thoughts. I hope that helps.
That helps a lot. I mean, that's how I got myself in the position I'm in, was I literally gave my last penny away.
Yeah.
So if I did that, then I can do all the other things you're saying. I'll probably incorporate several of those things. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good luck with everything. And you know what I'll do too, we'll do some fire round questions because we've only got supposedly 15 minutes left. And I've got to speak to a group of Stanford students tonight on Zoom with BJ Fogg's class, which is pretty awesome. We're doing a project with Stanford where we're helping to fund a research study on connection and addiction recovery. So he wants me to talk to all the students today about connection, which is awesome. Sonia, let's unmute you.
Thank you. Joe, you were asking a question earlier. What was the question? Can you just repeat the question? You wanted engagement.
Oh God, well, I don't even know which one what was it?
About the book, what is people think or what people want to hear from you about, you know, how can you change the book or how can you do something up with the
He's
book?
going to answer.
So the help me out here though. So did I say something that how could someone do you know what I said,
Wasn't it
Gina?
something about confidence and courage when you
No.
ask a question? No?
Oh, it's okay.
I don't know.
I think
Well-
like type in the chat what Joe was, what do you think, right, about the book, or what do you want to hear? What do you want him to tell you or go deeper with in the book? So
Okay.
if anybody wants to type in the chat, because this won't be the last I Love Marketing live, right? We do these often. So you can type in the chat and we can catch him up with the next one too. You know, where do you want him to go deeper? What chapters do you want to go deeper with?
Got
Or
it.
yeah, what's your thought about the book?
Let me say this too. If you guys have any questions, you want to put it in the chat, I will actually do Instagram and Facebook videos about it, and I'll post them on both places
Awesome.
because I love to get feedback. And if you like the book, only if you like the book and you read the whole thing, please put a review on wherever you buy books, Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever. And if you want the audio version and you don't get sick of listening to my voice, I spent 3 days in the studio recording the audio version of this book, so you can get it on Audible. You get it on Hay House because it's published through Hay House. And I'd appreciate it if you like the book, and if you hate it, then I'd say don't write a review. That would not be a good idea. No. You know, I saw my first 2-star review. All of the reviews have been 5 stars on Amazon, and there was one that was 2-star. But what I really appreciate about the 2-star was the person was very detailed in what he had written about. It's a guy from the UK. I don't know him. And the person had written about how he was hoping that I would not focus so much on pain in the book, which is funny because I don't find the book to be a book about pain. I just utilize pain as one of the mechanisms to bond and connect with people. But what I really thought about it, you know, Seth Godin doesn't even read his reviews because there's always going to be negative reviews of people that will just find a way to hate your book or your work, no matter what you do, no matter how much work you put into it. So I'm not bothered at all by someone doing a negative review unless they just like start insulting me or lying about things or whatever. But even then I probably will be like, whatever. But the interesting thing about it, reading that, is I want to make sure that if someone, you know, does not do the exercises, like every chapter has dominoes in it. So I actually want to start recording content and going deep into it, not just what people think are great about the book, but how people are interacting with it. Because I wrote the book in order to you know, start continual conversations and actually, you know, benefit people. And it's good to get that feedback. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I will do videos on them. They'll be short and I'll respond to them, and I'll post that stuff on Instagram. My team will post it up there.
That's great.
Just one brief thing, Joe. Thank you for that discourse. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Nadine.
Yeah, thank you.
Where did we go? Okay. And I just lost my train of thought. I am so sorry. But one of the nice things about the book is that it does make you think about another person's, about your own intentions and about what the other person actually needs from you. One of the things it's caused us to do in the past week is actually try to form a marriage between people, those who are either single parents, homeless, and needing housing, whether they're Section 8 or whatever, and those who are actually looking to like be handyman in a house. It almost inspired me to almost want to create an app to kind of bring these people together. So it does make you start thinking about every area of your life where normally you might go out and just sell or talk about your own information, and actually go out there and try to find a need and meet that need.
Yeah. Well, also the whole point, I hope I can help make people a little bit more empathetic, because the world really right now, there's been so much propaganda, fear porn, mistrust of leaders. I mean, I really think people that operate this way will be more helpful to the world. And I say I think the people that won't like my book are the takers. Anyone that's truly wired to be a narcissist, a sociopath, a psychopath, a taker is not going to like my book, because I talk too much shit about them. And so if people have that sort of premise, I don't think they're going to like the book. But the people that are very empathetic and caring, yeah, I think they will. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I think I'm going to pray for you next, but I got to watch my husband's arm.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Who's next? Is it Carrie or Dan?
Dan Alvarez.
Hi, Joe. This is a place where I want to express my gratitude for your work and also some questions. This is a very special moment for me. I haven't read your book still. It was one of my promises as soon as it gets published. My English is not the best, but here I go. So the question that I have for you and the group is, now I'm becoming a little bit resent by the fact that I connect a lot of people. I love to connect people. And I think that's a great also asset, but sometimes I feel that I don't get it in return, So I feel the message of a giver and a taker, and I feel that I want to balance that aspect in my life. So the other point is, I want to start giving some or creating some mastermind or community around books, around knowledge, around all of that. And I don't know if the skin in the game or the payment is a way to getting more commitment for each person. Is the question that I have for you. And a lot of gratefulness.
Yeah, no worries. It looks like you're in the gym working out.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Before sauna, yeah.
Yeah, and before good, yeah, that's awesome. If I can get done enough tonight, I'll be going to a sauna and a cold plunge later. So I think you said getting resentful when you're offering things to people and then they don't. Yeah. So here's the thing. And I write about this in my book, that if you're a giver, you're going to get taken advantage of. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's just that's you're a target if you're genuinely a empathetic giver. Now, when someone says giving value, though, you need to make sure that you're dealing with people at the level at which they respond. I also have a section in the book where I talk about how to deal with intimidation, because not everybody responds well to kindness and being nice. Some people, like, you got to talk shit to them. Some people, they're not going to hang out with someone that's not kind of like a bully. And so you have to pick and choose if you want to exhibit, or if it's within your being to utilize the behaviors needed to influence certain people. So I want people that are easy, lucrative, and fun. And if what I used to do, and believe me, I've been very annoyed, and I've had to go through a lot of resentments in my life where I felt like I just bent over backwards to help someone. And I have been massively betrayed by people that I spent years helping, that literally cost so much money, anguish, angst. I mean, I was raped and molested as a kid. I kind of get the predator thing of people hurting you. So, it happens in business. It happens in life. Most people are going to get their heart broken, probably not just once, but many different ways. The key, though, is to really do some inner reflective work and say, what am I doing that's leaving the door open? And how can I better boundary myself? And so what I used to do is look for red flags. And then my friend, Patrick Gentempo, he gave me this, just a simple way, look for the yellow flags. And I used to ignore the red flags, but I didn't even notice the yellow flags. And so by going through it, it gives you an opportunity to develop your spidey senses. And it's the lifeguard analogy is throw out a life, jacket to people drowning that are swimming towards you. oftentimes we want to pursue people that are rejecting us. And you see it happen in the dynamics of dating, where if someone pays no attention to you, you want their attention. It's that little kid in us that, please validate me, please, give me attention. And oftentimes we are wasting our time, attention, money, effort, and energy that are not reciprocal people. They're not worthy of it. Other times we're going into a situation with an agenda, and we have taker energy, and it drives people away. So that's something you really have to connect with yourself. And if you are creating value and you can prove it and you can validate it, I mean, Dean Jackson talks about this quite a bit, oftentimes if you want an opportunity, say, look, I'm going to produce this result for you. And if I do, will you pay for it? Yes or no? And if they will, say, okay, I'm just going to give it to you for free, but you're going to pay me. Because people are less attached to future money than they are to, money right now. And that's what, Dean actually goes right into that. The other times you just need a more compelling offer. Dean Jackson has that line where he says, a compelling offer is 10 times more powerful than a convincing argument. So if we have to convince people to give us money, convince people to do stuff, and oftentimes when we're selling, we are doing that, but really try to think about, what's the headline? What do I need to say? What's the offer? And how do I bring people in? So it's his whole notion of, more cheese, less whiskers. The prime directive of a cat is to get cheese, avoid mice. And so, Dean has this whole way that he
Other way around.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did I say?
The prime directive of a mouse.
I said prime directive of a cat. Sorry. Yes. Prime directive. That's what happens when I'm trying to teach Dean shit here. But yeah. So, the thing is here's the last thing I'll say on this, Dan. Read my book, because my book actually goes through how to do this stuff. But I will say that this is unfortunate that this exists, but whoever cares the least controls the relationship.
Whoever cares the least.
Whoever cares the least controls the relationship in a negotiation, unless you're dealing with someone that cares about you and you care about them, and there's real rapport built in, and they want to see you win and they don't want to see you lose. And when you're dealing with real givers and people you have rapport with, you don't need to play those games. But unfortunately, we often don't have enough rapport with people, and we have to play those stupid games. And you can decide that I don't even want to play that game, so I'm not even going to enter this game. But a lot of times, it's if you really are desperate, they smell it, and the takers will take advantage of it. And I do talk about that in my book, because it's a tight rope. It's a dance. You have to learn how to play. But yeah, I hope that helps. And if you create value in the world, use all of the negative experiences, just the raw material you need to figure out how to do it better. We need that shit. We need the obstacle course. You're in the gym right now, straining your muscles so that they can grow. The same shit happens with relationships. You got to do the reps. If you don't do the reps and you don't get beat up, you don't have people take advantage, you're not going to, all you're doing is practicing for the bigger game in life.
Thanks, Joe. A lot.
You're welcome.
I also want to know if there is going to be a course to getting deep into the book, like a platform where we can do exercises and put it together.
I'm working on a workbook right now. Where the hell did I put it? It's like around here somewhere. Anyway, but I have a little workbook that we're probably going to put out that, it's just going to be a book like this I would say do all of the dominoes at the end of every chapter, because right now the book actually is laid out with exact things to do. That is a course in print, or you can listen to the audio version. And I might do a course at some point, but for now, I just want to, make sure people read the book and utilize it. And then depending on if there's anything that seems to be lacking, then I'll create materials, of course. But right now I don't have a plan for it, but I probably will. I mean, that's what I do. I just come up with shit. So yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we have 3 minutes before Joe has to go. So if we can keep just rapid fire, we'll start with Melkin.
And I can go 10 more minutes, Gina, because my call is it's at the top of the hour, but I wanted to give myself buffer time. But yeah, we can officially end, and then I'll just do a bonus round for the people here. But I got wrap in 10 minutes, so I'll try to do them quickly. So thank you.
Thanks, Joe, for everything. I'm a fellow ex-drug overuser.
Yeah. I'm
and
I'm glad you're an ex, so that's good.
yeah, I basically some of my best friends are not with us anymore because they were playing with the same stupid stuff I was.
Yeah.
I survived. I lost use of my hand. I was a pseudo almost famous guitar player. I played with some famous people. My main thing, I love everything you're doing. You know, life gives to the giver. This is like my heartbeat, you know, this is like, it's true. And so the new book that you have is the same thing to me. What's in it for them? My question to you is I'm in a quandary right now. I want to give back. And so I'm building these courses and this whole idea of how to help everybody, because a lot of people I help become super famous. And I didn't get much out of that, except for I get to talk about it.
Right.
So I want to help people, but I'm in a place where I'm completely wiped out and giving and giving and giving. And I'm not going to stop giving, but can you give me some advice to keep me going?
Oh yeah. So life gives to the giver, and what's in it for them. You also have to take care of yourself. I mean, none of this book is intended, or anything is intended to be anything that's depleting. I mean, whatever, like, I tell the story of the British rowing team, Tom Davis Hunt, about does it make the boat go faster? So Dean Jackson is the one that actually came up with the term for this. Super happy fun day. Everyone here would be well served to have a super happy fun day, where you just say, like, if I could just have a day where I just do a bunch of stuff that's fun and super happy, what the hell would I do? How would I do it? Sometimes that's doing stuff by yourself. Other times that's, doing stuff with other people. But as much as you can construct a super happy fun day, how do you solve one problem that solves 10 problems or 50 problems? And sometimes that's sleep. Is your sleep good? Is your exercise? Is your nutrition? This is where I'll say the $1 million racehorse, because you brought this up. It's a good segue. If you had $1 million racehorse, and a lot of people here have heard me talk about it, and I'll keep talking about it because it's a good reminder. And I say this, every single thing that I say, I've had to say to myself. I mean, you really want to know what someone wants help with and work. What are they writing books about? What are they speaking about? That's the shit that they need in their own life, right? It's a reminder. Like, I wouldn't be writing about stuff I didn't care about in my own life. So if you had $1 million racehorse, and every time that horse ran a race and won, you'd make $1 million. The question is, how would you treat that horse? You give him the best nutrition, the best exercise and training. You wouldn't overtrain the horse. You wouldn't have the horse up till 3 a.m. watching porn or drinking alcohol or smoking cigarettes. You get proper sleep, nutrition, exercise, but more importantly, the horse would be running in the right races. Because my friend Nick Peterson says you never win a race you don't want to be in. And so some games in life, the only way you win is you don't play. And that's where we have to say no. This is where Dan Sullivan has this line where getting results doesn't take time. It's the not getting results that takes up all your time. And so the things in your life that get you the results don't take up a lot of time. It's all the other stuff that is draining you and bleeding you. And I'll tell you, this is a difficult thing. Like, for instance, if everyone here was put into a situation where including me, where you were forced to cut the amount of technology use in half, emails, social media, text messages, your phone, everyone here would become instantly more productive. But if someone's not holding a gun to your head to force you to do that, the dopamine receptors, because these are dopamine cash registers, are literally tempting you to waste a lot of time. So there's a lot of different things I could say to this, but what I would say is you can give to others, but you got to give to yourself. And so if you're in a position where you can go get massages, do yoga, breathing, cold plunges, cold showers, all of those things will help your dopamine. They will help your system, and you have to treat yourself like $1 million racehorse. So in order for you to perform better and win those races, first you have to have the mindset that I am $1 million racehorse. Because I always make a joke where someone's like I had this guy who would always like eat terrible food, and he was so smart and so bright, and he was smoking cigarettes. This is years ago. I said, I'm like, dude, like, why are you doing this to yourself? You know better. He goes, that whole thing about how your body is a temple? He goes, well, unfortunately, mine's a satanic temple. And it was funny as hell, but it was also kind of like sad at the same time of like, he's such, and the guy died of drug addiction. And he was such a talented person. But you know what? That's what, I mean, here's what I would say. We did a podcast, and Gina can post it with Ned Hollowell, and it was an I Love Marketing Live like this with Ned Hollowell, who's the top ADD ADHD psychiatrist in the world. And chapter 2 of his book, which is ADHD 2.0, talks about the default mode network, and it explains why the entrepreneurial mind goes dark. And feelings are not facts. We can feel like shit, but it doesn't mean that our life is shit. We can feel terrible. It doesn't mean things are terrible. So, you know, an Eckhart Tolle, you know, line is, here's a spiritual practice for you. Don't take your thoughts too seriously. So when we're feeling depleted, you know, oftentimes just get some rest, go get some sunshine, but long term, you probably just need to start treating yourself like the $1 million racehorse. Because believe me, I understand burnout. I took a 1-year sabbatical last year because I spent 30 years like a crazy person, you know, driving myself at levels that no normal human should. And, you know, there's a lot that comes from reflection and getting rid of the egoic need to get others to validate you. And anyone that really cares about you, if you need to take time off or renegotiate obligations, and just, you know, just be upfront, tell the truth, and tell people this is where I'm at and I need help, and ask for help. And like you're doing now. And I think if you do that consistently and do the reps, you'll get the rejuvenation you need. And oftentimes, in order to have a breakthrough, you got to break something. So there's you know, be one of my lines is, be willing to destroy anything in your life that's not excellent, and look around you, and what the hell do you need to just get rid of that is no longer serving you, and what races are you in that you know, because if you have $1 million racehorse that's only winning $10,000 races, get that fucking horse in a better place. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Good luck, Malcolm.
Thanks.
All right, Carrie, last question from Carrie, then we'll wrap up.
Thank you so much. Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good. I love the book.
Thank you.
I'm somebody who's really in my heart a lot, and it was just really touching because I just felt like it was a love story to your parents, and it was a love story to people that are givers and that maybe have made mistakes in the past and been taken advantage of, and it felt really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you.
getting a little bit touched, but I do tend to get touched. So it was really beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And so my thing as being more of a giver, and then, you know, sometimes in naive ways, right? I never really liked networking that much because in traditional ways, I always just wanted to go and see what I could give. And so I'm, you know, right now taking advantage of learning new skills and really appreciate the book. And I'm really excited about the new career that I'm starting. And there are certain people that I want to reach out to that feel like, in terms of where I am in the thoughts that, you know, like in terms of future thought leadership, they feel like they will be my peers. And for me to reach out at this point, it's hard. I'm not sure exactly how to reach out without having taker energy, since I'm just basically starting. And, you know, these are more established people. Like, for example, Annie Lala in the book, I think, is just one of the most brilliant minds around love. And I really want to be in conversation with her. I'm starting a podcast and it's in pre-production. And it, you know, I don't know how to sort of like go in with giver energy when there is that space where, you know, I'm not at that point right now, at that level career wise, and how to make those contacts in a way that isn't in taker energy and is in giver energy and feels good to everybody.
Well, here's what I would say. And first off, we all start out with where we're at, and then we're going to go to a different level. We have to develop the skills and capabilities and the resources in order to do it. So what everyone has, if they don't have time, they have money, they have attention, they have energy, they have effort. At this gym I work out at, there's a big thing on the wall that says effort is your responsibility. So what most people that are really awesome, cool people like and appreciate is when someone actually knows their work. So if someone, I get, I cannot tell you how many, it's now in the thousands of podcasts and interview requests over the last decade that we have said no to, because people show up with just a want, like, hey, I want to interview. They don't even like, they haven't listened to any of our podcasts. Dean gets the same thing.
Yeah.
People request, they haven't listened to, they don't cite a single episode that they've listened to. They do not give sincere compliments. It's like those bullshit spam things you'll get on social media with, would you really like to grow your following in your channel? We're an agency that, and it's like, how dumb and how much of an amateur do you have to be to even try to fake sincerity if you don't even have any, but and I talk about in the book, as flattery works, but it's not really, it's like cotton candy. It's not really sincere. And so one of the things that anyone that's a genuine giver, if someone reads their, like for Annie, if you wrote Annie a sincere letter, like, I really like your work and here's why, that could be a way to get her attention. Secondly, and I don't mean just the attention, that'll get her attention, but to really want her to is to write someone a letter. If you haven't, I'm not saying making this up. I mean, it needs to be real, and or you'll develop a reputation of being a taker. But if you were really impacted by someone, like they were a domino for you, or you found their material just useful and interesting, if you wrote them an ad saying, hey, I read your book, or I looked at your website, and here's 3 things that I think would be valuable to you, and I wanted to provide these to you because I have an ask, and I don't just want to ask you blindly. I admire you. I think you're smart. I'm trying to, build a following here, and I love to have you, be one of my guests. And if you can, either now or in the future, but here's what I got for you. And if I'd love for you to say yes. And if you're not able to, what could I do, or what would need to be required in order for you to say yes to my request? So you can show up with value, you can show up with connections, you can show up with ideas and strategies. If you can get the physical address of somebody and mail them something that is sincere. I mean, here's the wrong way to do it. Like, people often will send me their books that have never read any of my books, and they'll ask for a book blurb, and they're not a client. I have no relationship with them. I don't even know who the hell they are. And they're sending me a book, asking me to blurb a book. And it's just like, I charge $6,000 an hour when I do consulting. And do you want to pay me to read your book? And even if you're paying me, I wouldn't read the book if I'm not interested in the topic. And they don't, and a lot of people send me stuff that they could find out on social media what the hell I'm interested in versus what I'm not. And so you come across as a really sincere, genuine person, or you wouldn't even have asked the question like that. You don't want to come across. So that sort of energy is just good energy to begin with, because you can sense it, that you don't want to be like, you read my whole book, right? I actually want to help you because you read my whole book for no other reason, that I like people that actually read my stuff, right? And so what I did in the beginning, like with carpet cleaners, I'm going to share something with you, and you can extrapolate this into a million different ways. There was all these carpet cleaners that were selling something nobody wants to buy. I had to figure out how to successfully persuade people that don't have that don't want to buy carpet cleaning. Some things are bought. You're going to go buy food. You're going to go buy clothes. You're going to go buy entertainment. Some shit has to be sold, right? No one wants to hire a carpet cleaner. No one's like, really can't wait till the cat pees in the corner so I can call a carpet cleaner. Like, no one's doing that. So I had to figure out how to sell this stuff. So I would read books like Influence by my buddy, Dr. Robert Cialdini. Gina, if you could please post the interview I did with Robert in the chat, that would be great. Watch my interview with Robert. Chris Voss on negotiation. Gina, I'll ask you if you could post an interview I did with Chris Voss in the chat. These are all trainings on how to be better at this sort of stuff. But with the carpet cleaners, they always needed to get into, and now I'm really going to be behind on my, I do this to myself. This is one of my kryptonites is I go too long. So I would identify Mr. and Mrs. Bigwig, and all the carpet cleaners they're competing with were doing quotes and estimates. And they, and everyone does a quote or estimate. And what I would say is like, and they would run across the gatekeeper, and they weren't talking to the decision maker. And it was like a terrible way to present themselves. And I said, find the decision maker, who they are, man or woman, and find their shoe size. And this was before the internet existed. It was way harder to find information on people prior to the internet. Now you can just do searches, and literally in a matter of minutes you can find things about people that before took hours to find. And I would say get a pair of shoes. And back then it was like Reeboks or Nike were like the two big, when I first started doing this, those are the two big shoe brands. Now there's a million. But I said, find their shoe size, and then write a letter that says, dear so-and-so, I needed a way to get my foot in the door, and I wanted to come up with a clever idea to meet you. And so I wanted to send you one shoe. I'd love to meet with you next week, either on Tuesday or Thursday, because I've got ways that you could really make the environment of your building look better. And it was usually done for commercial work, for commercial carpet cleaning. And they would send them one shoe by a uniform courier, so the person had to sign for it. And I said, most of you are not going to do this because it's logistically involved. But if you do, you're going to get, and if you send out 5 to 10 pairs of shoes, you're probably going to get calls from between 1 to 3 people. And they're going to call you, they're going to meet with you, and they're going to hire you. And I would tell this to groups of people, you'd be lucky if 1 out of 100 did it, but every single person that would do it, they would always get the call, and they would always get their foot in the door. And they basically send a letter, I needed a way to get my foot in the door, and I'll bring the other shoe. And the other, no matter how rich they are, no matter, they want the other shoe. Mm-hmm. And it became a very, but here's the other thing. It doesn't just hit the emotional side of someone wanting something. What it does is it actually demonstrates this is a very creative person, and I want to meet them. So you could send whatever you want to send. It doesn't necessarily need to be a shoe, but if you can send physical things, or you send a really sincere video, and you just start developing rapport, and you say, look, I don't have a lot to offer you right now, but I'd love to have you on my show, and here's why. And you give them the real reasons why, or whatever the request is. And if you can offer anything that they're looking for, is because here's the thing, what needs solved? Everybody has some pain or angst in their life. And if someone could show up and bring some relief or solve it, that's a way to make it happen. So those are some of the exercises I would do. And then finally, since you have my book, the McKay 66, that's Harvey McKay's formula. If you actually did that with like the top 5 people that you want to meet, and you'll meet every single one of them. I mean, anyone, no matter who they are, if they're reachable. Like, I mean, and obviously don't try, everyone wants to meet Oprah, everyone, and frankly, some of the most interesting, valuable people on the planet are not famous. And knowing famous people, and I know a shit ton of them, has nothing to do with, reaching opportunities. It's really finding people that you can collaborate with and that you can, be useful with. And that's where genius networking comes in. The reason I call it genius networking is it's not normal networking. It's finding people that have skills and capabilities that will collaborate with your skills and capabilities. And together you can create something, and you can facilitate them getting what they want. And that's the list you make first. The list is, what are they? Who are they? What's their skill? How can I help them? Make that list of all the ways you can help them, and then help them with that. And then as a result of doing that, they'll probably help you. Does that help?
It helps a lot. Thank you.
Good. Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you. I really appreciate the book.
Awesome. And yes, thank you. Tell others about it. Write reviews, everyone, all that sort of stuff. So Dean, Gina, wrap this thing up. I'll read everyone's comments, and I will answer some of the questions that were posted, because I didn't have a chance to look at any of them while I've been rambling here. And I will post them on Instagram. So if you follow me on Instagram, it's @JoePolish. Twitter is Joe Polish. And that's
YouTube is at Joe Polish.
Yeah. Follow us on YouTube. I'll try to kill 2 birds with one, or 17 birds with one stone. I'll answer some of the questions. We'll turn them into reels. We'll turn them into little videos, and we'll do even a mashup where I go through a whole bunch of them, and maybe I'll answer them in one fell swoop, and we'll post that on YouTube. And then and I'll do my best. So
awesome.
Save the chat.
Well, that was awesome. That was great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Watch your inbox.
Dean, one last thing. So David Strand, okay? He posted, please email directly at dave@joepolish.com for info regarding our ELF business coaching, our Easy, Lucrative, and Fun. If any of you want coaching, Dave is facilitating and running that. So if you would like to do that, just if you're interested in us directly helping you, dave@joepolish.com, and he'll send you info about that. Sorry, Dean, wanted to put that plug in. So thank you.
That's great. I love it. And I don't know if you guys have heard, but Joe's got a new book. It's out right now. It's available at bookstores everywhere. You can get a copy for you and a friend, and fits in stockings. So perfect Christmas gift for everyone.
That is true. And there's that QR code right next to me. Is it right there? Yeah.
Yes.
So it's right there in reverse on my screen. And if you just point your phone at it right now, you can buy a gift for someone.
All your dreams will come true.
Yeah. Christmas shopping.
Point your phone right at this QR code and all your dreams will come true. And until then, watch your inbox, watch your social media, watch everything. And we'll be doing another one of these very soon. So we hope to see you then.
Thank you. I hope everyone enjoyed it and found it valuable, and I appreciate the support. So thank you all, and thank you, Gina, thank you, Dean, and everyone on my team. And you guys are awesome. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, or whatever time it is and what time zone, because I know we have a few out of the country.
Thank you. Have a great meeting, Joe.
Thank you,
so
Joe.
much. Bye-bye.
Yeah.